Everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Adorkable Rachel, and it's time for another episode of Rachel Reviews, so let's just hop into it. Solo, a Star Wars story, is the latest in the Star Wars franchise, and this time we focus on our favorite scruffy nerf herder, smuggler, and all-around likable scoundrel, Han Solo! The movie was directed by Ron Howard. Actually, it was directed by a lot of people because there was a lot of issues behind the scenes, but ultimately Ron Howard got the last word. And I've always liked Ron Howard, for the most part. I mean, he does have an interesting track record when it comes to directing films, cause he did direct Apollo 13, which I loved, but then he also directed The Grinch, which I hated. So yeah, I really didn't know what to think going into it. And before we get started, this episode is brought to you by Stardust, the free app that allows you to share reactions to movies, TV shows, and trailers. The movie tells the origin story of Han Solo, and it basically gives us what we would expect in this kind of movie. We learn how he met Chewbacca, we learn how he came to know Lando, we learn how he got the Millennium Falcon, and without giving away too much, we also learn how he made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. And all these things that we knew about before, they pretty much happen like within a day. Basically, this is a movie that focuses on a character that we're already familiar with and things that they did in their past that are referenced in other movies, but now we actually get to see those things. It's very much in the same vein as Rogue One. It's a prequel movie to the original trilogy that explores something we already know, but on a more explanatory level. Han Solo is a smuggler. That's how we know him. That's always been a part of his identity. And although the film starts with him in his late teens or early 20s, I'm not exactly sure what age he's supposed to be, it does eventually get into how he got into that trait. I do want to put it out there that I think actually Alden Ehrenreich did a really good job performing this role. I didn't really have an opinion of him because I've never seen anything that he's been in before this, but I gotta give him props that I really did believe that this could be Han Solo. This could have been him when he was a younger, more naive man. He had really good intention and motivation in his acting, and although it wasn't like a standout performance, and actually I do think Han Solo was one of the less interesting characters in the movie, I still gotta give Ehrenreich credit that he gave a really credible performance. In the movie, Han meets a lot of smugglers and they have to go on this mission to go and get something. It's some kind of energy or explosive, I think. They don't really explain it that well, but I know it's dangerous and it's definitely valuable. But along the way, Han also meets a lot of new and interesting characters, and this is actually part of my biggest gripe in the movie. Han kinda has this tendency to meet a lot of these potentially promising characters, and then they just kinda leave the movie for whatever reason, and then he meets a lot of other new and interesting characters, but then they leave the movie, and then we meet even more characters. This quickly becomes a repeated pattern, and I don't understand why we couldn't have just hung around with a lot of these characters for longer than just one act of the film. They keep treating all these really interesting characters like they're gonna be hanging out with us for the rest of the journey, but then they just kind of leave before we really get a chance to get to know them or care about them. And I know that it is possible some of this may have been from the original cut, some of this might have been from the Ron Howard cut, maybe it didn't always clash together really all that well, but I just kept feeling like I was rushing through a Netflix series for most of the movie. These characters and elements come and go so quickly, I just kept thinking to myself, wow, how much more interesting would it have been if we gotten the chance to explore all these different things and let them develop in an episodic series. Also, Paul Bentley is in this movie, and he's kind of a villain, but not really because he's only in the movie for like 2 scenes. So, okay? Again, he seemed like a really interesting character, and it would have been awesome to spend more time with him and understand what his deal was and why we should fear him, but no. I mean, yeah, we know he's gonna kill you if you don't accomplish your mission, but what's to stop you from fleeing? However, the biggest standout out of all of the characters in this movie, for me personally, was Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian. Even in the marketing recently, I swear, 90% of the time, it's just Lando, mostly because Donald Glover is like eating up every second he possibly can of just performing this suave character. And as expected, this was a really great casting choice. Donald Glover really put out the charm and just brought out the smarts of Lando. And maybe this was dubbed over, maybe not, but his laugh sounded like Lando's too. But I also appreciate that it didn't really seem like he was just intimidating Lando. This actually felt like a real character. He really embodied himself into it and just created his own thing out of it. More so than Ehrenreich being Han, I totally believe that Glover was Lando Calrissian. And thankfully, this is one of the characters who actually stays with us for a good majority of the film. The movie takes place between episodes 3 and 4, and one thing that I actually really do appreciate about this movie is that we're seeing more of what the galaxy is like now that it's being controlled by the Empire. We get to see civilians clash with stormtroopers, the really bad state the galaxy's in, no thanks to the Empire, and we also see how Han's affected by all of this. That was really interesting. And there were a couple of little things here and there to be appreciated in this movie, but other than that, I feel like as an audience, we kind of knew what to expect. We expect Han to meet Chewie and Lando and get the Falcon, but then there's really not that much to that character after that. There's also a girlfriend character played by Amelia Clark, but I really couldn't get a grasp on their relationship and just figuring out what her deal was. I mean, it's Emilia Clark, she still gives a really good performance, but the character's just kind of bland and not that interesting through most of the movie. Except for that one shot where she walks out wearing Lando's cape, that actually was kind of cool. Oh, also at the end of the movie, there is a twist with her character, and that will make you go, what? That was the one moment in the movie where I finally was like, whoa, what? What's this about? I want to know more about you now. But then the movie ends, so I don't know, sequel bait maybe? Actually, I won't lie, I would love to see another Han Solo movie. I kind of want to see where that was going, and I would love to see Han Solo do things that I'm not already that familiar with. Thing is, I think this movie really wanted to be a huge summer blockbuster, but really, it only exists to show the bare minimal adventures that Han Solo's been on. And one thing about that ultimately makes the film suffer is that there's really not any character development from our main character. We get that he's a risk taker and he's impulsive, but I don't think he ever really learns anything or even makes any huge change throughout his arc. Nor do we really learn anything about him aside from what Star Wars fans already know. The real surprises in this movie, if any, come more from the characters that we didn't already know about before this film. At the end of the day, this is a movie about Han Solo, and Disney knows how to be pandery, so it's more all about just getting you, the die-hard Star Wars fan, to say, oh yeah, I remember that, yeah, huh, I got that reference, ha. Which, okay, yeah, I get it, you're trying to appease the fans, great, but you know, that's really not gonna leave a huge lasting impression if that's the greatest strength of the film. I think what we wanted was a really fun story about Han Solo that really pushed the limits of his character and helped us learn even more about him, but instead we just kind of got this really standard sci-fi story that actually was surprisingly kind of predictable, with a couple of in-jokes thrown in there. Actually not really like in-jokes so much as in references. The action is standard, the plot is standard, the characters are not developed enough. Movie, you had all these really fascinating characters. Why did you take them away from us? It had promised to stand on its own and expand the Star Wars verse in so many different ways and also show us a side of the franchise that doesn't focus on the Force, but everything just kind of goes bye-bye before we really get a chance to grasp it. And I really don't feel all that different about Han Solo after seeing this movie. But this movie does have its benefits. I have to admit, whenever Han did something that we were already familiar with that we knew was coming, there was never something that made me suddenly go off like, oh no, wait a minute, how is that possible? That doesn't add up. Yeah, I mean, everything did just kind of fall into place as it was supposed to. Also, funnily enough, when Han does meet Chewie, he actually speaks Wookiee to him, and I've never seen that before, but I totally bought it. Han always understood Chewie, and Chewie did always understand Han, so why wouldn't Han be able to speak Wookiee? It actually was kind of endearing. I liked it. Also, to the movie's credit, it did look really nice. The cinematography was really gorgeous, and there were some really fun action sequences. And also, I do admit that even though a lot of characters did kind of come and go really quickly, a few of them did make an impression, and I was really sad to see them go. And yes, obviously the movie is really fan servicey, but can't deny that my little inner fangirl, it got the best of me at some moments. There were a couple of parts that made me really happy and it made me squeal and clap my hands with delight, like, yeah, it happened. Also, they did thankfully tone down on the references that would have been outside of the Han Solo story. There's no random shot of C-3PO and R2-D2, they don't reference Luke or Leia or anything. No, they knew solely to stay on Han Solo. But I get it. We're doing a lot of movies about things we already know about to get our nostalgia feels going, but I ultimately hope that within the next couple of years when we see other Star Wars films like this one, it'll kind of just be more of its own original story, and then we can just let the plot and the adventure carry itself, and not the references. And I still stand by my opinion. I really do think that something like this probably would have worked a lot better if we had gotten a Netflix original series or a mini-series or something. But the movie wasn't really awful either. For a movie that went through production hell behind the scenes, it turned out decent. And I know I just spent a good majority of the review kind of harping the movie, but I actually did kind of like it more than I thought I would. My friend Alexander Robinson did say that this is probably the least good of the Star Wars films that have come out in the past couple of years since Disney took over, and he's absolutely right. It lacks focus and depth, the sum of its parts could have been a lot stronger, but it also does give you a lot of what you would expect in this kind of prequel backstory movie. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you leave your expectations at the door, you might still really enjoy this movie, and you'll probably have a lot of fun watching it. It's not bad or an insult to its fans, it's just not the mind-blowing journey that we had hoped for. And I'm also just a little bit sympathetic because I know that Disney is kind of pushing out a lot of Star Wars films these days, and they're not all gonna be winners. In the future, I do hope that a lot of these films will be a little less flimsy and not as standard and predictable, but for now, we do have a competent Solo movie, so take it for what it is. If you are a Star Wars fan, it's worth the watch. So those are my thoughts on Solo, A Star Wars Story, and now here's a compilation of this week's featured Stardust users.
I absolutely loved it. It was what it was meant to be. It gave you some good backstory for Solo.
I think that the VFX and the catering to the practical effects and VFX were done very well.
I thought it was a perfectly decent movie. Now, it is kind of safe, and in a lot of ways it is kind of predictable.
Donald Glover does do a good job at playing as Lando, and L3 was easily my favorite character.
And if you're not already familiar with Stardust, it's a free app you can download that lets you react to movies, TV shows, and trailers under 30 seconds. And it's the easiest and fastest way to share your video reaction online. I use it every day to react to all kinds of movies and shows, both new and old. And whenever I see a new film, I always share my thoughts on this app first. So if you want to see those videos, or post your own reactions, or watch other reactors, then be sure to click the link in the description down below, and be sure to follow me, Adorkable Rachel. Also, if you want a chance to appear in the next compilation, then be sure to follow me on Twitter when I announce when the next opportunity will be, so you can tag me in one of your next reactions. So now I want to know, what did you guys think of Solo, A Star Wars Story? Are you a die-hard fan? Did you enjoy it? Are you new to the Star Wars verse? And did you like it even though you haven't seen a lot of those movies? Also, let me know, who's your favorite Star Wars character? And are there any other movies coming out soon that you want me to do a review of? Well, go ahead and leave your comments below. Be sure to like and share. And if you're new and like what you saw here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And also be sure to hit the little bell button down there to get notified when new stuff comes out, because I make new videos every week. Bye, Adorkable Betties. I'll see you soon.